Hi everyone, welcome to the Geekly. My name is Jules.
I'm Lex, and today we are talking about The Rain, Stargirl, and SnowPiercer Episode 1, and also some more episodes of Upload. But before we get started, we have a poll, I believe.
Would you prefer the Snyder Cut to be released as a 4-hour movie or 6 35-minute episodes, which is apparently also under consideration? And 75% of 64 voters went with a 4-hour movie. So yeah, that's where people's heads seem to be at the moment. Okay, let's talk about The Rain Season 2. Last week you said you were absolutely loving it. I think you called it on Twitter the post-apocalyptic show of all post-apocalyptic shows. It's very much more your domain. And so I'm going to pass it over to you to get the ball rolling. What did you think of Season 2 of The Rain?
Season 2 is not as good as Season 1, and there are a few reasons for that, I think. Obviously, it's shorter. They kind of crammed a lot into 6 episodes. For the first few episodes, I remember feeling kind of let down. I think I got to I was halfway through it. I got to episode 3, and I was just thinking, I'm not really feeling it. It's not really grabbing me like the first season did. I got to episode 5, and there was like a holy fuck moment, and I tweeted about it, and it literally was like a sucker punch to the feels. A very much beloved character died horribly. And I kind of like what they did with that, particularly with Jean's character. He was such kind of a sweet, naive, kind person, but the death of Leia just sort of twisted him in a way that he became very cruel and vengeful. But it was absolutely believable that he would do that, and the actor portrayed it perfectly. He is so good at doing so much with so little, like in terms of he doesn't always have a lot of dialogue, but his physical movements and his facial expressions are just, they're magical. And then again, kind of the last episode sort of fell short for me as a season finale. Kind of picking apart why this is, I think the strength of every post-apocalyptic narrative is the journey. It's, a band of scrappy survivors out in the wild dealing with an unfriendly environment, interpersonal conflicts, threats from all sides, realistic threats. That is, because obviously this season there is kind of a very big threat. It's not like they're ever safe. The whole quest to cure Rasmus, I felt was a bit overdone, because like the whole first season was like, we must protect Rasmus. The whole second season was the same thing. We must fix him, even though he's like killing everybody he comes in contact with. He's like a mass murderer at this point. And yet Simona in particular keeps treating him like that 11-year-old boy. And okay, it's her brother, and she basically raised him, so it's going to be difficult for her. But at the same time, I think I commented on this in season 1, she's so freaking naive. Like, at what point is she going to cop on to the fact that the world she's in is not the world she came from? It's not life in the bunker. It's brutal, it's hard, and you can't be humane in this world. So when they sort of settle down in this compound, which is kind of like a perfect compound, The Walking Dead had this problem when they set up camp in the prison, and they were farming, they were safe, the zombies weren't a problem anymore. They were just kind of getting on with life. There was very little to challenge them, and honestly, in a post-apocalyptic narrative, that gets very boring very fast. We don't watch these things for everybody to live happily ever after. We don't watch them to basically have kind of a recreation of a normal life. We watch them for the drama, the tragedy, the emotional arcs. So having most of the season take place in this compound, which was just conveniently outfitted with solar panels, water pumps, electricity, a fully functioning lab where they were able to do a whole bunch of shit, staffed by expert like epidemiologists and biologists who could do all this stuff. The fact that Simona, who was like a high school student at the beginning, was able to sequence genomes to find the cure for the virus was just totally unbelievable. And then that like literally an army is pursuing them. Firstly, a well-trained army, and then they recruit a bunch of normal citizens to like kind of double their numbers, and yet these 5 civilians who were all kind of late teens, mid-20s, I guess at this point. They were in the early teens when the rain came. So all of these, like, this group of civilians, a very small group of civilians in their mid-20s, are somehow able to elude capture of this well-trained army with all sorts of tricks and gadgets and things to track people down. It was just, I hate it when shows do that. It's so unrealistic. I did find it interesting that the virus starts talking to him in order to save itself. That was kind of an interesting twist. But I did feel like they relied on a lot of tricks that they used in season 1 in this season, and it was kind of repetitive.
Yeah, talking about the virus, speaking to Rasmus, I kind of got Venom vibes from it. I complimented them last week because, astonishingly, this group of kind of young adults were communicating exceptionally well. They were talking when they had problems, and they were learning to kind of live together, put aside their differences, and just have this common goal of kind of escorting Rasmus to Apollon. And I just felt like that all went out the window in season 2. It just feels like they've sacrificed a lot of tension and conflict in favor of a lot of unnecessary interpersonal / relationship issues. And I didn't feel that was what the show was in season 1. My least favorite character in season 1 was Rasmus. My least favorite character in season 2 is also Rasmus. I don't like, where does he get off saying to people, do you know what, Simona, like, I don't really want the cure. Yeah, I've been thinking about it, and I think it's part of me. Like, he's laid waste to all of these people, these ex-Apollon people. Sarah's brother, who was Fee's, the father of her, she's pregnant, the father of her child. And he's like, you know what, Simona, I think I'm good. He's got the run of the place, walking around, like, half the time he wasn't even locked up, or he found a way to kind of escape. And they're just like, Rasmus, like, dude, seriously, can you just take this fucking cure? Because you are like a nuclear warhead of misery right now. And then the cure doesn't work, and he basically just walks out like the human embodiment of a plague, killing these dozens of people. I mean, that was a great effect. Like, I love the look of his kind of, when the virus is like coming out of all of his pores or whatever, this like cloud, this killing cloud. But it's just, he really bugs me, the character. But yeah, you were absolutely right about Gene. And the thing about Gene is he looks so unassuming. And when he was sat there in front of all those monitors, like heartbroken into 1,000 pieces, we'd had this great kind of development between him and Leah, and he just kind of losing it and becoming very psycho very quickly was superb to watch. I'm of the opinion that we actually didn't need the death of Leah. It felt entirely forced and unnecessary for me. I know she went in there to kind of save Simona's life, but I just think we really, really did not need that. It was there for the sake of it. But yeah, just a bit of a step down, and I already wasn't particularly keen on it.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens in season 3, because they've lost the base camp again, so they're kind of out in the wild. Rasmus has gone off on his own. We've got to see what happens with Sarah. Sarah has this immune disease, but she's just walking around everywhere. Like at first she has to go out in this whole like get up suit thing with oxygen and everything, and then she just starts like wandering around like it's okay. And they were saying that like 4 years after her diagnosis she would basically have to live in a bubble, but she's not. Like,
how far was the journey to that amusement park as well?
I have no idea, but they like, I mean, everybody was like, oh, don't go outside, you need all of this protective gear. And then she just like, she takes off her suit, she doesn't have her oxygen thing, she's just wandering around in the woods with, as you mentioned, nuclear warhead Rasmus, and everything's okay. She has a little trouble breathing sometimes, and she coughs a bit, but that's kind of it. And then she climbs up to the top of a roller coaster. Like, how sick is this girl?
Yeah.
So it was stuff like that where they seemed to adapt, they seemed to change the lore to suit their narrative wants and needs. Like, Patrick becomes this very sentimental guy for no apparent reason. I mean, the scene between him and Martin where he admits that like he wants a house and a wife and to kind of get his life in order, like that I believed. But then later in the woods where he was, talking to Martin about his relationship with Simona and how he was like obviously madly in love with her, that kind of fell a little bit short. It didn't seem like something that Patrick would, one, notice, or two, actually talk about. Meanwhile, his investigation of the secret part of the bunker was very, very Patrick, and I was into that. I would have liked more about this kind of secret group that was trying to figure out how to get the capsules out so they could escape the quarantine zone. I think that's kind of what I liked about season one, was there was a lot of kind of mystery and conspiracy around it, whereas in this season they've kind of laid all their cards on the table, and it's their cards aren't as good as they think they are. So yeah, I agree with you. This is a step down from season one. I hope that season two is maybe not necessarily longer, but at least better thought out and better planned. This just felt like it was put together very hastily, and they didn't kind of double check their work.
Rasmus is kind of like heading in full, nuke mode towards Apollon. What would you want from season 3 to kind of, bring it back in line with your expectations? Or how could they create a satisfying ending for you?
I think they need to get rid of Rasmus. In season 1, I was disappointed that they neutralized the rain. I mean, it's called the rain, and that was a very interesting narrative effect where, it added a sense of urgency where they could only travel for a certain amount of times before having to find shelter, and sometimes they were kind of out in the middle of nowhere and the thunder would start and they would be like, oh shit, we need somewhere to go. And they were forced into making certain decisions because they needed shelter, like the cult, the cannibalistic cult, for example. I would like there to be some sort of environmental threat like that. I think it's gotten too easy for them. I want less of Apollon and more of the human on human threat. Obviously, like I kind of want Jean to meet back up with the group and have them kind of resolve their differences and really just kind of get back to the dynamic of the first season, where it is about this kind of disparate group of people figuring out how to deal with each other, figuring out how to survive. I don't know. I want it to be scaled back and less about the corporate army coming after these guys and more about realistic threats to them and more environmental things. I mean, we have the virus sort of taking over the landscape now, which could be an interesting threat for them. Like Martin and Patrick were trying to get to the Apollon lab, and they kept having to divert themselves because the virus was in their way. So, I mean, I suppose that could be a new environmental threat for them.
You just said something that's so interesting. Like, I can't really remember it raining in season 2. Like, I'm struck that it probably did, but like, it's funny how it's not even the main part of the story anymore. Like you said, they defanged the rain, they neutralized it. I loved having that, where there was this fear of, was it when they were going into the cult and they said, you've got to give us your guns or we'll leave you out here to be in the rain.
Yeah.
That was an incredibly good plot device, very atmospheric. It's just lost its way in many regards, and I'm, kind of going through the motions now. Should we move on to Stargirl?
Yeah, let's just get it over with.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to be honest, like with Stargirl, I'm desperate for this show to find its audience because I really do believe it's doing a lot right. I just feel like it's aimed at young adults. It's just a little bit too juvenile for my tastes. But I really believe that it's got, good casting, a really good aesthetic. I really enjoy the family dynamic. I love the special effects. I think the cosmic staff is wonderful. I think there's great interplay between Pat and Courtney. I think her fight sequences, kind of that combination of, her gymnastics and the cosmic staff helping her kind of fly and somersault through the air. I really like that aesthetic. She is, unfortunately, unbelievably fearless in that I don't believe how fearless she is in the wake of these coming up against these actual supervillains. The villain I quite like, but he's a bit kind of moustache twirling. But I really do like the kind of Norman Osborn, Harry Osborn dynamic that I'm getting from him and his son. I think Luke Wilson kind of is the show at the moment, and I enjoyed him testing the robot out in the field, as kind of dumb and playful as it was. So, yeah, I mean, those are my feelings. There's a lot to like here. For me, everything's kind of working, but it's showing itself to be more of a young adult thing. That's the direction they're kind of pivoting with it. So I have mostly positive things to say about this.
nothing in Stargirl is working for me, and I don't well, I do understand it. The cast is pretty good. Okay, Luke Wilson is good. The rest of the cast can fuck off. They're in small town America, and he's walking around in this massive robot and trampling on somebody's field, and nobody fucking notices. Like, come on. The music is like all over the fucking place. There's absolutely no consistency with music, and usually you don't really notice the music. You're not supposed to notice the music. It's supposed to just kind of be this soundscape in the background that complements the action and complements what's going on and kind of primes your emotions for certain scenes or builds tension. There was some sort of country song at one point. I mean, last episode they had a Hanson song from like when I was 12. The audience for the show has probably never heard of Hanson. So there was this country song, there was this poppy song, there was, I don't even know, it bugs me. It really bugs me because it's so out of sync with what's happening in the show that I can't help but notice it. And then I'm just sitting there saying, what the fuck is this song? I'm really tired of villains that are just evil. I think we've evolved in our storytelling beyond just bad villains. I kind of had this, what were we watching? Oh yeah, Penny Dreadful City of Angels thing. Like, I had this problem as well where the bad guys were just racists and that's why they were bad, and there was nothing else to them besides the fact that they were racists. Like, okay, yeah, make the racist bad guys, but like make them a little more three-dimensional, give them some nuance. And I felt that, what's his name? Mind something. Anyway, the villain, Brainwave. Like, I felt that Brainwave is just like, again, there's no depth to him at all. He's just a bad guy. He's very kind of single-minded. The relationship with his son, you know, he's an asshole dad, very aloof. I mean, we've got Lex Luthor and Lionel Luthor doing that. The Osborns from Spider-Man. Like, let's have a new dynamic. I hate her costume. I also do not believe that she made that costume in the home ec room of her school in, like, an hour.
I mentioned Spider-Man earlier. That was one of the things, because his first suit was garbage. His first suit was, like, fucking awful. And she's gone into this home ec room with, like, a bit of blue, a little bit of red, and, like, she's come out with this fucking... Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The dog even agrees with me.
Yeah, the dog agrees. He's outraged by all of this. He was actually watching it with me, and he was just, you know, like, fuck this shit. Like you said, I think it's very juvenile. I think it doesn't know who its audience is. I don't think it's for young adults. I would say it's kind of pre-teeny, because she's like she's 15. So yeah, I think it's kind of aimed at the like 10 to 13-year-old audience. It's got that kind of vibe. It's very PG-13. Everything is kind of wholesome. I'm waiting for there to be some sort of revelation that like everybody in the town is brainwashed or something because they are way too friendly. I mean, I grew up in small town America, and that is not what it's like. Presumably the people writing this have never been to small town America, so maybe they think that is what it's like, but I just found the whole thing very creepy. Basically, nothing in this show is good as far as I'm concerned.
That's weird. I think we've got a completely polar opposite effect, but we've come to the same conclusion that it's certainly not aimed at us. I said it at the beginning, I really do hope this finds its audience. I think there's a lot to like.
I don't feel like competent people are making this show. Or maybe it's like somebody's first show. I don't know.
I think the person who's writing it actually created the character. I think Jeff Johns created Stargirl because it was based on his sister called Courtney, who actually passed away in a plane crash. And so I think it's very personal to him. And there is a potential that he's, you know, nobody is kind of killing his darlings for him. And it's such a passion piece that he's not being as kind of critical with himself as he should be.
I would believe that. I would agree with that. I did last week. I remembered that she was based on his sister who died, and now I feel like an asshole for criticizing it so much. But yeah, tragic events in life can be very good for creativity. They can inspire a lot of stories, a lot of worlds. but I do think the danger there is sticking too close to real life, and that both the creator and the people around the creator are less willing to say this doesn't work because they're afraid of the real emotions attached to it, and of hurting somebody or hurting themselves, or letting go of things that they feel are very precious. And I mean, at some point, particularly if it's not like a non-fictional piece, you do have to step back and, you know, walk away from the source material a little bit. Be like, okay, you know, she was inspired by his sister, but he's got to make the character her own. He's got to make the world its own. He can't stay connected to his dead sister. And to be perfectly honest, if Courtney is based on his sister, he did not have a very high opinion of her. So yeah, I'm just going with the theme of being an asshole with this show.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. You need to trust people sometimes, because you need a different set of eyes on it. You need perspective. You need to take a step back. Maybe that's not what's happening. I don't know if he's doing the whole season, but yeah, like for Lex, it's clearly a, you know, do not resuscitate. For me, it's, there is an audience, and I just think it's got a kind of charm to it, and like you said, the kind of wholesomeness, and I think, you know, this will really land with some people. I think we'll potentially do like one more, but then we'll probably pull the plug.
I think actually it would be a good first foray into superheroes. Like I said, for a preteen who's not really been into comics, but, you know, everybody's talking about comics and comic book movies and comic book shows right now, and they're like, oh hey, I want to check out this new thing, or they're just developing their own personal tastes. At this point, Stargirl is kind of a good show to cut your teeth on.
And I think it's interesting, the two of us maybe don't think about it quite as much, but there aren't that many female-led superhero shows either. You think about Supergirl, you think about Batwoman, Agent Carter kind of back in the day. We're getting a bit more kind of Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel in the films, but yeah, it's also good to have something for everyone. And so this might be, again, like you said, it might be somebody's first foray, and yeah, I hope it finds its audience. Do you want to talk about SnowPiercer?
Sure, let's talk about SnowPiercer. I was worried about this show going into it, and essentially my wariness was justified. I did see a review that basically said this show would be good if you hadn't seen the original, and I definitely agree with that. I'm really curious to actually read the Snowpiercer graphic novels to see how they differ from the TV show and the film. The film was a lot more interesting. For one, Bong Joon-ho's directorial abilities are just brilliant. He has a great intuition for how to set up the camera, how to use visuals to insert metaphor, and very subtle little hints that you don't actually need to see to understand or appreciate the film, but like on rewatchings, when you notice them, it's kind of like a cool little, not quite an Easter egg, but like a secret between you and the director. This is basically a crime procedural that happens to take place on a train in a post-apocalyptic world, and I'm not a fan of crime procedurals. I don't feel like the main character, whose name I can't remember, I don't feel like he's a particularly compelling character. They tried to throw a lot of stuff at us to trigger some emotional investment in these characters and some kind of pull some heartstrings, and none of it really landed. Particularly because we just watched the film, I was very immersed in that world. I felt the world building in the film was done incredibly well. And granted, yeah, it's a film, but it's only like, this was about half the length of the film, and I felt they could have done the world building better and not tried to cram so much in. Overall, yeah, I'm unimpressed by their take on the Snowpiercer mythology.
So there was a moment in Snowpiercer, the TV show, that I had to kind of pause it because it was the most absolutely insane thing I'd ever heard in my entire life. We did watch the film, and you know, all the tailies are in the back and they're plotting revolution and they come up with the plans and stuff like that. And you think, okay, like I know how this is going. We're told the train is 1,001 carriages long. And so you think to yourself, okay, they're on for maybe 6-7 seasons. They may be planning something long. Bit by bit, they'll incrementally creep their way up the train, eventually getting to the engine. And that was kind of what I assumed was going to happen, because that's essentially what the film was telling us. The main guy, Andre Layton, he's kind of like one of the brains behind this plan. And somebody comes in, they're like, yeah, it's an extraction. We're taking Andre Layton. And they take him out to this carriage. And I didn't know what they were going to say, but I didn't expect them to say, yes, we hear that you're a homicide detective. Yeah, there's been a murder. If you solve it, you'll be promoted to trained detective. Like, what the fuck is that? That's the most insane thing I've heard in my entire life. I'm thinking two things. One, is this murder going to take the whole season to solve? We've got a 10-episode season of SnowPiercer. If he takes 10 episodes to solve this one murder, he's not very good at his job. Secondly, if he solves it in like a if he it's ridiculous. If he solves this thing, what amount of crime could possibly go on in this train to warrant there being a trained detective? It's fucking insane. It's the most preposterous thing I've ever heard in my entire life. I didn't know how they were going to sustain just the film over, presumably, let's be charitable, let's say 5 seasons. Even if they just wanted to, incrementally move their way up the train, I don't know how you keep that entertaining for 5 seasons. But how the fuck do you justify a train detective for more than 1 season? Because you got to think that the people on this train, sure, yeah, rich people do shit all the time, but within the confines of a train, even if, the director of the film was here, I still don't know how you extend that story. It was the most insane thing I'd ever heard. And typically, the one that's brought him out, she had aspirations to be a homicide detective as well. So clearly, she'll be his partner. Clearly, he's going to solve this case. He'll get this little badge and he'll be turning up to people's carriages saying, yeah, hi, I'm Andre Layton, trained detective. Tell me what happened here.
Every time you say trained detective, it just it makes me laugh.
Yeah, that's what Melanie said. Jennifer Connelly said to him, "You'll be promoted to trained detective."
Yeah, it just it sounds more ridiculous with every single time. Like, if they start actually referring to him as trained detective, that's it. I won't be able to watch the show anymore because I'll just be laughing too much. Shows like this require a certain suspension of disbelief, and I think they're really pushing the limits. Also, I don't understand why everything has to be turned into a crime procedural. Like, they did this with Lucifer as well, which he's a fantastic character. I love him in the comics, but in the comics he's not a detective. He doesn't pair up with a detective. He does Lucifer things, and that's kind of the magic of the character. And to have him suddenly be granted, okay, they framed it in the show that he's interested in analyzing himself, and so every case is somehow helping him delve deeper into his own psyche, which does get a little bit old. So yeah, then we have SnowPiercer, which is this awesome landscape, this incredible idea. You have a train divided by class that has the last vestiges of humanity on it, and it goes around the world endlessly, and the only way they survive is that this train keeps moving and all the different problems and difficulties that could come up with being reliant on this piece of technology to keep you alive, because the outside environment is so inhospitable that it will literally kill you the minute you step outside. That is a really fascinating concept, and what have they done with it? They've turned it into a detective show. What the fuck? There are so many interesting ways that you could go with that. Obviously the film did the kind of revolutionary class war kind of thing, and you find out that the train that's supposed to go on forever is actually falling apart, and there's a whole bunch of propaganda by Wilford and his cronies. And the moment that Chris Evans' character realizes everything's been a deception, those are actually impactful moments. You get invested in the characters, you feel for what's happening, you can parallel it to what actually happens in the world, whereas this is just a cheap copy. And if I were the creator of the comic book, I would be horribly offended at this interpretation of the source material.
I must say, I love the opening minute and a half animated explainer for the history of the train. I thought that was really well done. I'm like weirdly curious, to be honest, like what route this goes. If suddenly, like all these murders or all these, kidnappings or theft starts cropping up on this train, it can't, it will always feel forced.
It'll be like the Murder She Wrote scenario, this quaint small Maine town that just happens to have a plethora of dead bodies showing up.
Yeah.
I did enjoy the opening sequence as well, and that gave me a little bit of hope. And then, because I was like, oh wow, this is really cool. This is interesting. This is a new way of doing it. I like it. I don't know why, but I like it when like live action shows do backstory and exposition in cartoons. Birds of Prey did the same thing, and I was like, obviously because they couldn't get Jared Leto back to film the scenes, or they didn't want to, whatever. They needed to represent Joker without having Jared Leto. I really enjoy that technique, but then it just kind of went downhill from there.
Let's move on to upload episodes 4 and 5. Episode 4 was called The Sex Suit. Episode 5 was called The Grey Market. Right off the bat, The Grey Market was a filler episode. I just didn't care for it at all, which was a little bit disappointing. All in all, though, I'm still really enjoying this show, and I like it that they're just starting to ramp up the murder mystery element. I'm still finding it really funny, and I spend most of my time watching this show thinking, who's doing it, and are Nora and Nathan going to get together? They are. I kind of wish the show would dial them back slightly because it's so kind of over the top. But yeah, this is a really enjoyable show.
Overall, I'm enjoying it. I think there are a lot of really good parts to it. These 2 episodes, there were some things that kind of bothered me. One, that Fran's car went nuts and fell off a pier. Like, they've already established that accidents with self-driving cars is like incredibly rare and never ever happens, and it was this fluke accident. So whoever was smart enough to get the car to wreck the first time would be smart enough to not commit murder the same way twice in an incredibly unique way, because that's obviously going to tip. I mean, we don't know if Fran is dead. I hope she's not dead. Like, I love her, and I feel like if they kill her off right now, they've completely wasted loads of opportunities with that character. But it just seems like a bad move for whoever has killed
Fran?
Nathan.
Oh, Nathan.
It just felt like overkill. Like, they should have found some other accidental way to off her than doing the same thing they just did a month ago with Nathan. Particularly because she's investigating his death and has not made it a secret that she's investigating his death. Like, everybody she's encountered has been like, yeah, Nathan was murdered and I'm going to find out who.
Let's talk about the murder. When you think about means, you think about motive, you think about opportunity. My take on it so far is that Jamie lacks the opportunity and Ingrid kind of lacks the motive.
My theory now is that they've teamed up for some reason.
Yeah.
And Jamie actually wants to make money off of the idea, but Nathan wanted it to be freeware, and so they had to get rid of Nathan, and somehow, I don't know why Ingrid she wanted the certainty of keeping him forever because for some reason she's really in love with Nathan, which I still don't understand, but whatever.
I don't understand that either. And you're right, you have to combine them for them to have the whole set of things, but you find out that Ingrid's family is like ultra wealthy. She's very attractive. She could have any man. When the guy that they're selling the idea to referred to Jamie Nathan, he referred to Nathan as the good-looking one. And Ingrid seems like the most kind of shallow individual possible. So the idea that her and Jamie would be collaborating to make money kind of falls flat because she already has money. And the idea that they would be getting together because she wants to be with Jamie falls flat because he's not the quote-unquote good-looking one. So I'm a bit confused about that so far. The fact that Ingrid seems so like determined to keep Nathan as well. Like, I don't know what's special about Nathan in this circumstance. Sure, like, everybody loves him. He's a very popular guy. Everybody's constantly commenting on how attractive he is. But yeah, nothing quite adds up. I can't put those pieces together to make them fit yet. Unfortunately, I think there has to be another rogue element that hasn't been introduced yet, because I can't make these pieces. I can't make the puzzle with the pieces that are on offer at the moment.
in talking about the various relationships, I'm kind of opposed to the Nora Nathan relationship, because as we talk about very frequently, they always have to pair up main characters, particularly if they're male and female. And I just think, like, let's have some more male female friendships. I can see why Nora likes Nathan. You know, she initially thought he was just this kind of, you know, arrogant, good-looking playboy, kind of self-centered guy. But as they've gotten to know each other, she's realized he's actually kind of sensitive. She found out about, you know, the project he wanted to do to make uploads available to anyone, and kind of equalize the upload process, which seems very in line with her values. You know, we see her cheering on the protesters who think that uploading should be a right for everyone. You know, she wants her father to upload. She's kind of poor herself. She's really struggling to survive. So they seem to be very compatible in their kind of perspectives and outlooks on the world. Whereas Nathan and Ingrid, it's like, okay, maybe he is just shallow and she's hot, and so that's why he's with her. Or, you know, he didn't really think about having a long-term relationship with her, but obviously he's kind of stuck in a long-term relationship with her now. Because, I mean, he mentioned that now when he thinks about, you know, forever with Ingrid, it is not as appealing as being with her was when he was alive, when there was kind of a foreseeable expiration date. I don't get what about Nathan is so attractive to Ingrid. Because, yeah. I mean, all right, he's good looking, but, you know, there are a lot of hot guys out there who would be more in line with her ambitions. I mean, he wants to give something away for free. I can't imagine her being on board with that. She seems like an incredibly stereotypical capitalist one percenter who is all about, you know, profit and not so much about humanity and helping out poor people. So, yeah, as you said, the puzzle doesn't come together without another element. And I am interested in the murder thing. I wish they would kind of focus on that a bit more. Weirdly, in this, I kind of want the crime procedural. In terms of these specific episodes, I didn't really enjoy the whole gray market thing. The whole storyline with the kid, I think they could have done it a much more interesting way. I mean, the fact that, you know, he's 19 and he's stuck in this 11-year-old's body, and the frustrations that come with that, and his parents won't let him go, and he's trying to convince them that, you know, they need to accept that he's growing up, that he's not the 11-year-old kid that died, you know, 7 years ago. Like, that would have been an interesting storyline. The fact that they had him grow up into a girl just pissed me off. Why is that always the go-to joke, that a guy has to be a girl and, you know, is really embarrassed about that? Or, like, they make a joke about that. I did like the fact that, you know, at the end Nathan was talking to him and being like, you know, you should use this experience to kind of change how you view women. And the kid was like, yeah, you know, I was only a girl for like 15 minutes, but, you know, and I can appreciate what it's like now. I just kind of, like, I think there are other ways they could have done that, and it was really sort of ham-fisted, and it's not funny, really, to make somebody be a gender that they don't identify with. It's not funny.
Yeah, to be honest, I wouldn't even try to fix that episode. I would just bin that episode, turn it into a 9-episode season. It was pretty unwatchable, and that's why I was very disappointed, because it's obviously this won't be a TV show for everyone, but the standard, I think, has been pretty high so far, good consistency, and the grey market just failed in almost every respect. You were talking about Nora and Nathan, like you said, I think they would actually be a very good friendship, but I don't really see it happening now. I would just love them to pull back slightly. Presumably, well, this show has been renewed for season 2 because it's actually generating a real big buzz at the moment, apparently. I just feel like they're maybe trying to force it all into season 1. And yeah, it's a shame they couldn't have paced themselves a little bit more to make it feel a bit more sort of natural, because it doesn't feel natural at all.
I'm actually really invested in his freeware idea, and it frustrates me that he can't remember the name of it. I want to know, obviously that has something to do with why he was murdered and the corruption of his memory files. But yeah, I think it's a really cool idea, and I don't know, it fits in with my kind of worldviews that everything should be equalized, and, you know, everybody should have access to the same amount of resources, and likewise in this world, upload shouldn't just be a privilege for those who can afford it. Like, you know, anybody should be able to access it. So yeah, and I think it adds an interesting quirk to his character where, he has been kind of portrayed as this sort of superficial non-starter, but at the same time, his passion project is this freeware project to give anyone the ability to create their own afterlife, which is kind of amazing when you think about it.
Yeah, I hope we see more evolution of him. I like what we're seeing so far. And as you said, I think several weeks running, this might be the best Robbie and Mel there's been. I don't want them to tire it out because I just don't know where they could go with it. Presumably he's going to get downloaded at one point, but it can't be 3 years of solving his murder. So maybe it will become a police procedural. Maybe he'll be promoted to Lakeview Detective with his angel sidekick.
We've got some interesting things coming up. Next month, we're going to be doing some giveaways and interesting stuff. We're going to continue doing SnowPiercer and Stargirl. Dark is actually coming back for the final season in July, which I'm very excited about. Doom Patrol comes out at the end of June. Umbrella Academy is in July. August, we have Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And then, we've got The Boys, Orville, and WandaVision coming back at some point.
I think the Twilight Zone might be coming back, even though we largely hated season 1. The opener is directed by Jordan Peele. So,
yeah, maybe that'll be good. We've also got some podcast away. We're doing some more Patreon content. If you want to check it out, you can become a patron for $1 a month. It's very cheap. We appreciate all the support. You can also leave us reviews on Podchaser, iTunes, Spotify do reviews. Anyway, you can leave us reviews places. We like those too. Leave us a comment, send us an email. We have a website, geeknerdpod.com.
See you next week.
Bye.